So now then, you've probably seen this graphic before. I feel quite sure you will have done somewhere along the line. And the reason is it's probably the best way of explaining. The other one I use is a duck or a swan, where they're gliding peacefully along the water, and underneath their feet are going like crazy. And that's essentially what the brain is doing. The surface level communication, so everything you're physically displaying, everything you're saying that's coming from your conscious mind, is just the surface, and it is usually about 10%. The conscious mind is literally is not the main player. The conscious mind is just the one that is doing what the unconscious mind wants it to do. 90% of what's going on in the brain is coming from the subconscious or the unconscious. And by the way, they are the same thing. Just people like to, the reason they call it sub is because it's submerged. Unconscious is it's not aware of what's going on. It's in an autonomous mode, but they are essentially the same things. But where we're coaching, typically we go down, and that's what you're going to learn next week, is to go down into the subconscious mind from the conscious. The conscious is very much the surface, like lighter touch of things, like, how are you? You okay? How are you feeling? Yes. And when we start to use different tones, and you're going to learn that, and you've already been learning that from me, is actually as we go deeper, we get a different response from the unconscious. And the unconscious is where the deeper level communication is. It's where the beliefs are formed and the real decisions are made. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I could say to Heather, just going to randomly pick a situation. Oh, Heather, wouldn't it be lovely if we went to the cinema on Friday? Let's just imagine we lived anywhere near each other and we wanted to go to Bridget Jones. Wouldn't it be lovely if we went to the cinema on Friday? And Heather might say, yeah, that'd be great. So that's the conscious communication that comes from that. She might get home and then realise, actually, she's not that into Bridget Jones, and actually she's not even that into me. And in fact, she doesn't even like going to the cinema because she doesn't like sitting still for 2 hours. And in fact, she'd rather sit at home and watch The Traitors on Friday. So actually what would happen is all of the real decisions are being formed here. So she's then going to have to come back to me and go, oh, actually, can't make it. And she'll make some bullshit excuse, because that's how people work, right? Sorry, can't make it. Barry's doing something else. So that's what would go on. But actually, sometimes the subconscious decision comes from the beliefs of, actually, maybe Vivian doesn't really like me. And she just invited me just to I don't know, maybe she's trying to get me as a client. Maybe she's trying to make me like her. Maybe she's trying to make me think that she likes me, and she doesn't really. So these are the kind of things. Can use Heather as an example for this, because I feel quite sure none of that is going on. In fact, she probably loves Bridget Jones, and feel quite sure she's probably already seen it. So
I have actually.
What is
Oh no,
brilliant.
I want to.
I cried for at least half an hour of it. It was a proper crier. Yeah, no. Nikki's did you like it, Nikki? Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. I was either crying or laughing out loud.
It absolutely was that. Anyway, so you get the concept of this. So the belief system sitting under here is what we've created from the time when we were able to create a belief or have a conscious memory, which for some people can happen as young as 3 or 4 years old. So if there is something traumatic that happened to somebody 3 or 4 years old, they will remember that. They won't remember much else. If they won't remember joyful things typically, because down here in the unconscious mind is the part that keeps us safe. Its only job is to keep us safe and to procreate, essentially. So everything, so that's why we're attracted to people. And when we're not attracted to anyone, we will get attracted to someone, because our job is to procreate. If we don't feel safe, we'll do everything we can to recoil and to feel safe. That's the job of the unconscious mind, essentially. So these beliefs that get formed here, and I'm going to show you how that happens, are literally running the show. They are the map of that brain, and it's basically doing all the tugging of the yes you can, no you can't, who do you think you are, what do you think you can do, if you can, you can't, you're right, that kind of stuff is all coming from under here. So the way that we create these beliefs, please excuse the diagram, I did not draw this, and in fact I reckon I could have drawn a better one, but here he is anyway. And it's also back to front randomly. I've just noticed I nicked this from somewhere and it is actually back to front. Probably should do something about that. Anyway, so this is what happens. This is what really happens to create the beliefs, how you create your rule book. So we're going to do a lot of work on this anyway. So just so you understand, what happens is an external event. I'm going to use an example in a minute to show you how this works. So something happens outside of us. It could be to do with us or not to do with us. We could witness something or we could experience it. And then our head, the unconscious that we just talked about, It does a whole load of stuff. Now, do you remember we talked about generalizing, distorting, and deleting last week? Yeah, so that's what the brain will do. Because if we can't make sense of it, it has to make sense of it to be able to file it in the right place. So it will generalize, delete, and distort to put it in line, almost like we've got a filing cabinet. My visual brain has a filing cabinet with generalized, deleted, and distorted, and it'll pop something in each one of those files. Our innate ways of doing things, which are our habits. So this is where compulsions, addictions, and habits sit. So if it sits with that, we will do it. So if Nikki liked to go out on a Friday night and liked to drink lager, and I said to Nikki, oh, we're going to go out, but there's no lager, it's wine. But actually, you're okay because you used to drink wine. If Nikki did used to drink wine, she'll probably go, yeah, that's okay. Well, I'll come and I'll drink wine. If she didn't, she probably would say no, because it doesn't sit in her innate way of doing things. So the way we behave comes from our rule book and our head. And therefore, that's why we keep behaviors, even if they're shockingly bad. That's why overeating, drinking, drugs, gambling, overspending, scrolling, I don't know, bad sex, whatever, all of these habits, they sit with us because they become our safe routines and patterns. In NLP, we call them strategies. So you're going to hear that word a lot. We also have got a value filter of the things we think are right, are wrong, the things we've been taught. Like if I said, oh, Heather, why don't we go to the cinema and let's not pay, let's just sneak in. If Heather had been brought up with my dad, she'd probably be like, yeah, let's do that. How much fun is that? But if Heather's been brought up by a priest who basically everything has to be above board and honest, Heather's going to go, no, we can't do that. I'll pay for you. So her response to that would be based on her value set. Our value set is what really gets triggered. That's why we see a lot of trolls, get a lot of people get upset by things because we've triggered a value. And the values are really quite innate. That's where our ways of doing things come from. Innate means it's us. It's native to us. It's ours. It belongs to us. We've also then got a set of beliefs that we've already created. So I'm going to use an example in a minute. If we've created a belief, let's say that we're no good at public speaking, going to pick one that I feel quite sure we're okay with, because Heather is, even though she thinks she isn't. If we had an external event that said, and then when someone said, oh, you're amazing, that was incredible. If Heather didn't believe it, we just wouldn't keep it. We would distort it and say, well, they're only saying that because whatever, because we couldn't make sense of it. And our actually innate way of doing things is telling ourselves that we're no good at public speaking. That's how we formed the belief in the first place. Whereas if Nikki thinks she's amazing, just going to show it the other way around, and someone says, oh, actually, I didn't really get much from your talk. Nikki's going to be like, well, that's bloody ridiculous. She'll distort that because 30 other people that day said it was amazing and she can't make sense of it, so she'll get rid of it. And also her innate way of doing things is believing she's brilliant as a public speaker, and her value set is based on giving back. So that person clearly didn't need anything, otherwise they would have taken something from it. She's got a strong belief about who she is. And this is how we then start to make decisions. This is how we make decisions in the unconscious mind based on all of this. And then we've got lived memories, experiences, which can be joyful or traumatic. So they can trigger, and that's where our triggers come from, trigger our beliefs, trigger our value set. We can be triggering our memories. And when we're talking about NLP, we're working very much on memories, and they are the representation systems we were talking about of how we remember things. So there's a lot going on in the head from a tiny little event. And the event can be just somebody glances at you wrong, right through to somebody tries to attack you, right through to someone says something, somebody reacts to something you say. It could be something happens in a car, you get it right. It could be anything. And the brain is going to use all of these filters to make a decision of how to internally represent that event in the brain. That's how we decide how to remember it. Do you get this? I don't know, years ago, I always use this, but no one ever remembers the advert. And I'm really annoyed. I'm going to find it actually and put it in a dashboard. There's a drink, there used to be, I don't think it exists anymore, a drink called Sheridan's. I don't know if you remember it. If you like liqueurs, you will. And it had a dark half, which I'm going to assume was like Tia Maria, and then a white part, and it was in a bottle. And you basically put it, and both bits came into mold. So there was, I think the white bit was probably some sort of creamy liqueur, Baileys or something. It was bloody lovely. Anyway, it's right up my street. But anyway, if you find that, I'm going to find that advert after this. So this advert, their advert for it was basically how it was a tale of two halves that came together beautifully. That was the advert, beautiful concept. And they basically told a story. And the reason you'll see why I'm using it, they told a story of a girl and a boy who went on a date, right? So they're about 19. And the girl is like, oh my God, it was so romantic. He knocked on the door for me. We came, we walked by the river, we went to the pub, and he bought me a drink. And then and then he even said he'd walk me home because it was a beautiful evening and it was more romantic to walk me home than for us to get a cab. And you know what? Neither of us wanted any food because we were both so in the moment. So this was the girl's account of it. The boy's account was, bloody car broke down, couldn't go and pick her up, had to bloody go a walk for her. And then, of course, I couldn't take her anywhere else. So we had to walk to the pub. Well, luckily, I had enough money to buy her a drink because that would have probably been the end of it. But I definitely couldn't afford a kebab at the end of it. And I definitely couldn't afford the taxi. So I had to walk her home. Anyway, it all went all right, though, because I got a kiss at the end. So the same experience was filtered and remembered by these two individuals exactly the same night in a different way based on their values, their beliefs, their decisions, their memories. In the case with the girl, she will have distorted all of that because, you know, she probably fancied him and she had all those nice pheromones going on. And he was more in the truth of the facts of what had happened. So we'll internally represent that event. So when someone's giving you a compliment, some people go, thank you very much. Some people go, oh, really? Do you think so? And that's immediate. Like, this doesn't take long. It's a split second. Like, we've all, women are bad for this. Oh, I like your dress. Well, this old thing, I've had it ages, is one way that we then create a state and a physiological response. So in this case, the person's gone, this is an old dress, actually, I just found it in the back of the wardrobe. In which case the state is, oh, one of surprise, and the physiology is the response, and the behavior is the way they react. Oh, this old thing, I've had it for ages. So this is going on really quickly. Somebody's got a new dress. Heather's there in a lovely dress. It's brand new. And I say, oh, I love your dress. Heather's like, I know, right? This is amazing. I got it. It was the last one. It was in the sale and everything. Really excited state rather than a really. It was just the old thing I found. Her physiology would show it, i.e. her facial expressions, her body language, and her behavior would respond and react accordingly. Do we get this? This is what's really going on in the brain. So with coaching, what typically people are doing is they're trying to coach this part. Typical coaching, they're trying to coach a behavior, whatever that behavior is, whether it's not being able to do social media posts, whether it's not being able to go for a walk and relax, whether it's not being able to communicate, just using some of the things that you would do. The coach, a normal coach, standard coach, would coach the behavior. A deep structure coach, we're coaching all this in the head, because once we coach this, when any other external triggering or activating event happens, then the brain, we've changed the pattern, will change the internal representation of the event. Does this make sense? So if we talk about, I'm just going to pick a simple one. I don't think we've got any smokers in here. I don't think anyone smokes. So typically, if someone believes they're a smoker, their innate way of doing things is they always have a cigarette when they're out having a drink. They will generalize and distort the fact it's bad for them and actually people around them are not doing it. They've made the decision that they are a smoker, and their memory is they always go to the pub and never fag, right? So that is what's going on. So consequently, if somebody smokes, an external event happens, oh, here you go, Nikki, here's a cigarette. Oh yeah, I'm a smoker, is what that belief, and it's an identity-based belief that gathers all of this information. And the internal representation is, oh yeah, I'm a smoker. The state is lovely, I smoke. Physiology is accepting the cigarette. Behavior is lighting it up. If we're going to help somebody quit smoking, we're going to generalize, we're going to change the generalization, and we're going to distort the behavior patterns. We're going to change the belief. We're going to change the memories even through lots and lots of different really clever resetting neuropathway work, so that when the next time someone offers a cigarette, they say, oh, no, thanks, I don't smoke. Naturally. No, oh, I have to, I don't want to, I shouldn't, I mustn't. When I hear people that have quit smoking, oh, I really want to, and I'm like, you haven't quit smoking, you are in pure willpower. You are not using the system of your brain to then say that this is no longer an innate way of being, it's no longer a belief, it's of no value. The decision is to not smoke, and all the memories before that were just of you used to be a smoker. Does this make sense? This is the basis of deep structure and NLP work together. The deep structure coaching is to understand fully what the brain is internalizing, what it's representing, what physiological condition and behavior it's creating. And then the NLP processes, which you learn on the second half of the course, are to change it. So the deep structure coaching is to understand it, and the NLP is to change it. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I've got an example of this from this morning, something really simple. I had a
Go on then.
post that I put on TikTok, and there was a comment on the post, and I read it, and she said, well, that didn't work for you, so that's a bad example. And my brain started to go into distortion of, oh gosh, I need to change that whole post. What if other people think that post? What if that? And then I just went, no, that's not right. He's misunderstood it. And I just deleted it and carried on with my day.
Very good. Good, good. So you intercepted it yourself, which of course we
Mm.
can. That's how we stop our behavior. So that was a strategy that you had, is let's stop and think about it. Let's revisit it, because your brain could have gone into this, well, your physiology did happen, but you managed to stop it somewhere along this little line here.
Mm.
And, you know, we're always doing that. Sometimes you can stop yourself eating the chocolate, or stop yourself from telling someone to bugger off, or stop yourself from saying I quit, which probably Faye has to do on quite a regular basis, I would imagine. I've had enough, I'm out of here. So consequently, she will stop that behavior, but it will still create this physiology. It will still create that which it did for you. So to stop that happening, we could stop it here. We could stop it with your belief system. We could completely stop that if we wanted to, that behavior. Okay. Any questions? Oh. Just checking. Any questions? No, I bet they would. Hello, Faye.
Yeah.
Let's have a
Go
look,
on.
just see.
Typical me. So yeah, I won't go into the detail of it, but you know when people say, "Oh, I've tried everything," because I heard that this afternoon with someone at work, and I had to just bite my tongue because I just thought, you haven't, you really haven't, and I know you haven't, and I and I really wanted to be like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why haven't you tried this? Why haven't you tried that? And I mean, I didn't at all, because I just thought
We
it
could,
is absolutely
they've
not
got
my
to believe.
thing.
No, because they already believe they've tried everything. So the only way we could prove that is to help them understand. So coaching them as to around what they have tried, which, you know, is 7-step clean language strategy, which we're going to be covering on this time. But actually what happens is that when they say they've tried everything, they mean they've tried everything within their resource, within their remit of what they understand and what they know. When someone says, oh, I've coached myself, I'm like, oh, have you? That's lovely. What have you done then? So in fact, exactly what Nikki's just talked about, they've intercepted their behavior is what they've done. Yeah, I didn't do the thing. I didn't throw the shade. I didn't say bugger off. I didn't eat the thing. I didn't smoke the thing. I don't know, whatever. They've managed to intercept their behavior. So your person you were talking about has basically tried everything. They'll have tried all sorts of coping mechanisms, maybe. I don't know what it was about. Lots of routine changes. But they definitely, if they haven't changed it, then they haven't done this. Because once we do this, it changes it. It's quite straightforward. And you know that, Faye, right?
It's about their weight, and my comment was, but you don't have to buy the stuff, like, and I really had to, like, it's, you know, it's a close person to me, so I was like, I can't say too much, but
you can, because that's not coaching, that's advising, which is what normal people do, right? So you absolutely could. But actually my wife says that. She says, oh, if you don't buy it, you've only had to resist it once. That's Emma's actual saying, which she says to me on a regular basis, which is null and void now. But yeah, it's when someone thinks they've tried everything, it's because what happens, they are fighting with their own filters. They're fighting with their own innate ways of doing things, their own belief system, which they've created of actually nothing's going to work for me. So the friend that you're talking about, we've tried everything, therefore nothing works. So the only way we can do that is to work out where that belief came from and restructure it. We're going to reconfigure where that belief actually came from, because they haven't tried everything. You know it because you've got an answer they haven't tried. So you absolutely know for a fact that what they're saying isn't true.
I've got a whole list, but I feel like saying, if you followed this and this and this, I would be able to help that person 100%, but I would never do that because they would ask me for that if they wanted to.
And that's not coaching, that's mentoring and advising. And it's a big temptation when you know. It's so hard when you know.
It is when you see people struggling and you really, really want to help them. But then I think, how can people say, oh, I've tried everything? I think, absolute rubbish. You haven't.
So you can't advise them because nobody, so someone convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And you'll hear me talk about this as an NLP presupposition. someone convinced against their will is of the same opinion and behavior still. So I know that Nikki has this situation. My wife's had this situation. I have it with my wife. And I'll say, Emma, all you've got to do is that. You've got to say what you just said to me out on your social media, and loads of people will follow. And she'll say, yeah, I've tried that. I'm like, yeah, no, you haven't. You haven't. So if I was coaching Emma, I would have to ask her lots of questions around what she has done, how it went, how she felt, because that's a better route to getting into the belief system than it is me going, no, what you need to do is this. Because all the time her belief system and her innate values and way of doing things is going, bit like the Bob Monkhouse board. I don't know how old you are, probably don't remember Bob Monkhouse, but Family Fortunes, that's what the brain says. As soon as you start to give lots of advice, especially unsolicited advice, but normally most advice, Heather, you'll have an academy full of people that you're explaining how to do things and they're still not bloody doing it. It's because what happens is your stuff comes into their head and their head goes, no, I can't do that. I'm no good at that. People will judge me. I can't do it. I'm not creative enough. I can't write that. I can't do it. So the best way you can do it, even in your academy, and I know you're thinking about this, but other things, is to coach them around their belief system, around what doing that means, what doing that would change for them, what doing that would feel like, what might happen if they were to change it. And these are all the clean language questions you're going to start to learn from next week. Because as soon as we start to infiltrate the brain, infiltrate, that's where filters comes from, then actually the client internally represents this in a very different way. Whereas until then, this all stays intact and you're just like, you may as well be hitting, that might as well be a hammer. You may as well be hitting on them the front of the head with all your information and it won't be going in. It won't be going in. I've got a lived experience, and I hope Heather doesn't mind me sharing this. When I first met Heather and we were talking about what she did, Heather absolutely was in the mode of making money, like making money and selling products and selling things. And I remember saying to her, you need to find your purpose. And she went, yeah. So here's me, bang, 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 right? Fast forward, the retreat in January. Now Heather's like, I found my purpose. I'm going to do this. So what's happened is Heather, through all of the experiences and some of the work we've done, and certainly the stuff she did on the retreat that she's got no memory of at all, probably, she's created a different value around her business in her head. She's created different beliefs about herself. She's made some new decisions, and her memory of who she used to be probably feels like a different version of her already, I would imagine. And we've got lots and lots and lots of new innate ways of doing things. In fact, your posts are so different, Heather. Like, I'm watching you on social media and going, yeah, you are a different person, because now we've got a different internal representation of our business and who we are, which changes the state. The state is now about empowerment. I can hear it and see it. We've got a physiological difference. Even how you show up, your behavior is completely and utterly different. So I don't know if you remember that conversation. You probably don't. No, you probably don't even remember any of the conversations. It's thankless task being a deep structure mindset coach. No one ever remembers how you've helped them. Because if you're doing your job right, you're reconditioning the brain and they won't remember who they used to be. So you won't remember. You'll look back at videos of who you used to be, Heather, and then you'll go, oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Faye, is this making sense to you the second time round? It feels like a million years ago when you first learned this. It probably does to you as well, I would imagine. Apart from this really attractive, I don't even know what, it's like an alien human. They've not even got any eyeballs, have they? I'm just going to change that. Right, okay. So what you believe about yourself is true. And that is probably the most simple statement I can make. Your belief system, you have to make right. You have to create evidence for it on a regular basis. So if you believe, I'm just going to use some of my examples. If you believe, oh, my brain just corrected that. That's nice. Thank you. If you believe that you need food to survive, i.e. to cope emotionally, I'm just going to use one of my own lived experiences, then you do. And what will happen is you'll spend your whole life proving yourself right. The unconscious mind has to be right. That's its job. And the only time that your belief system will update a belief is when it proves itself wrong. Does that make sense? Not that someone tells them they're wrong. Like you could say to me, Nikki, you don't need food to live emotionally, because your map of the world, your conscious bias is not that. You don't need it. You need it to survive. It's fuel, but you don't need it for emotional resilience. And I feel quite sure that's what you think. So your brain has spent a long time proving that isn't the case. My brain has spent my whole life proving it is correct. And the reason I've done that is because I formed a belief when I was 12, probably even earlier, but definitely my memory is 12, where I did cope with what I was going through emotionally with food, chocolate specifically, Biscuit Boost specifically. Remember the moment I rode to the shop on my bike and got the Biscuit Boost? Can remember it clearly, like it was yesterday. And this is the key to understanding where beliefs sit, is that the client will have a very conscious memory of it. It will be like larger than life. They'll remember a lot of really minute detail, whereas actually a lot of my life when I was 12, I can't remember. I can't remember a load of stuff, but I can remember some really, really important things that happened. And they needn't have been important to the rest of the world. Like my first day at school, I've got no memory of. I don't know, my first boyfriend, I couldn't even tell you what his name was. But that day when I chose to do that, and because I needed a coping mechanism, I can remember like it was absolutely like glorious technicolor, as if I was still there. And we call this associated in. You'll learn more about this as we go on. So the key point here is this belief system. This belief system has been created, and we have to discreate it. We have to uncreate whatever happens, because otherwise what you believe will still remain true, which is why advising and mentoring, unless it's about training and someone wants to genuinely learn what you're teaching them, is a complete waste of bloody time. Annoying, right? You're giving all your best stuff, all your best advice, all your best intention, your love and care, like your friend Faye. You absolutely know what that friend can do, but that friend, it will fall completely on deaf ears, which is where that saying comes from. A lot of our sayings come from how the brain innately works. So who are you? These are what you're going to believe. Who are you? And if you start any sentence, we call these identity statements. We say, I am not anyone that could ever be rich, or I'm someone that, you know, prefers to sit back and not really talk out. I'm someone that will fight for justice. I'm someone who loves to go for a walk more than I like to sit in an office. Faye would definitely say that. I'm someone who prefers to sit at my desk than go for a walk. I'm the opposite to Faye. So I am is an identity statement, and that's created at a very deep, unconscious identity level. So these behaviors and these experiences that we've created for ourselves, we've defined in the belief system, and we've done so much defining of it that it becomes our identity. It becomes who we are. So if you're seeing any of the stuff I'm doing out on TikTok, especially around weight loss mindset reset, it's because someone's formed the identity of someone that's overweight and overeats or binges or abuses food. Their identity becomes that person. So even if they physically remember the behavior, even if they lose the weight, their identity remains until they shift it. And some people can shift it on their own, but actually we can infiltrate the brain to help them create a new identity, a new belief system, a completely new mindset around that behavior. Because the more we evidence it wasn't true in the first place, and the more we evidence you don't need it now, the less the brain thinks that belief is true, and the brain will reprogram a belief. Good example of this, I used to do this in presentations, there was somebody going, oh. So Father Christmas is what I'm going to say. So at some age in your childhood, unless you came from a religion that didn't celebrate Christmas, I have to use that as a, had that one come at me. You believe Father Christmas was real. You believe Father Christmas left the presents wherever they left them in your house and ate the mince pie or drank the sherry or ate the carrot or whatever the routine was that whoever looked after you created, assuming everybody knows what I'm talking about here. Everybody, yeah? At one point, your brain was absolutely convinced that Father Christmas existed. Now, there will be a time in your life where someone either told you or you caught them in the act, or your old enough, 10-year-old brain went, hey, up, this is not real. There's no way anyone's getting down our chimney. Or if it was like me, we didn't even have a chimney. So when I started to hear about the chimneys, my brain said, yeah, we haven't got a chimney. So how does Father Christmas get here then? So, of course, my dad was quite sick of having to do this little charade. And he said, it doesn't really exist. And I went, oh, all right, then. And my dad was quite happy, right? So, so however you discovered Father Christmas wasn't real, a higher power of authority, typically, maybe your friends at school or a teacher or like social media probably now, but a parent or a grandparent or a sibling will have told you it's not true. So if you haven't reconditioned your brain to believe it's not true, somebody that you think has got a higher power of authority or knowledge says it's true, then your brain is more likely to believe it, which is why we create beliefs in the first place. So the belief system itself typically starts to create itself around the age of 7, 6, 7, 8, depending on the development of the child, but typically 7 is the magic number. The magic age. By the time we're 7, we've created our 6 different firsts and worst experiences of the key emotions in life, which is why whenever I'm coaching and someone says, oh, I was about 7, I'm like, yep, that'll be it then. That's where the beginning of the belief happened. That's where we laid down that belief, and that's where we need to go back to, because there's no point in trying to change a belief anywhere than its inception point. We always want to go back to the first or worst, as we call them. So we also have the what we're good at. So these are behaviors. Remember the little brain here? We've got the behaviors and the beliefs and the values and our decisions and our innate ways of doing things. So our innate ways of doing things are what we're good at. Oh, I'm no good at that. I'm great at that. Somebody says, I'm really good at running. I am really good at running. I'm a really good runner. I'm good at, I'm bad at. These are all identity statements, some of which are around behaviors and skills, some are around actual identity. When you start to think about what you should be able to do, this is where we start to get into a different territory, because this is outside of ourselves. These are shoulds. This is what somebody else has probably told us. And our coulds, what we could never do, these are decisions we've made that are typically not a lived experience. So the shoulds and coulds that you hear, and you hear me say, let's take the should and could, and you'll hear all my coaches going, oh, I said should, and they'll beat themselves up for it. Because once we start to should or could, it really means we're an outside focus. It's something that's outside of ourselves, in which case we can't really coach that because it's outside of ourselves. But that internally, I'm good at, I'm not good at, I'm brave, I'm whatever, absolutely is coming from internal work. So I want you to now think, just to demonstrate this to yourself, of something that you say about yourself. Like if I asked who you are, what do you absolutely intrinsically believe about yourself? And would say, I am, as a beginning point too.
Do you want us to say it out loud or just in our heads?
Brave girl, go on.
So the thing that popped into my head is I am a kind person.
Lovely. I'm a kind person. Nice. Good. Heather, what popped into your head?
I don't know, nothing. No, probably the same as Nikki. I am kind.
Yeah, no, you can't have the same as Nikki. It's like family all over again. You can't have a duplicate answer.
I
What
am
do you-
brave.
I'm brave. Lovely. Thank you. Faye.
Well, I actually did think that as well. I was like, I am kind, I'm caring, I'm creative.
Creative. Yes, I've heard you say that definitely before. So I want you to take your word now, and I want you to think about how you know this. How do you know? I'm not saying you're not any of these things, you three lovely people, by the way, but how do you know? How do you know? Just think about it for a moment. Feel into it. Understand where that feeling comes from. I want you to think about all the evidence you can gather for creative, brave, kind. How do you know, Heather? How do you know you're brave?
For all the things that I've overcome and moved forward with. I'm brave. I've been on a stage in front of people that terrified me. So that's brave getting up there.
Yeah, very. Anything else?
Tons of stuff.
And stuff. There it is right there. So the reason we know is because we've created a belief about it, and then we've found lots of evidence. And the evidence comes because we believe it, therefore we become it. What we believe, we become. So if we believe we're brave, we find our reticular activating system will go and find loads of examples to give us evidence of being brave. I dare say, Heather, if we do a lot of research, which we're not going to, and certainly don't want to actually even tonight, you've got somewhere you've been not so brave. I feel quite sure, but we've generalized and deleted and distorted those because we want to hold strong to our belief that we're brave.
Yeah, the twice I wasn't brave to tell people that I was raped, and I wasn't brave when I tried to take my own life.
Okay, so we have got some examples, but the brain has gone, yeah, but on the whole, it will still believe, yeah, on the whole, all the others, so many others. A bit like if Nikki had someone say, I didn't get much from your talk, there'll be so many others that she can get rid of that because we've got such strong evidence. And the more evidence we build, the stronger that belief becomes. And that's great when we're talking about positive things. I mean, Faye'll have lots and lots around creativity. I feel sure we've got examples. I feel there's probably paintings on the walls, and there'll be loads of examples of Faye's, and also the kindness that Nikki exhibits. Well, she's done so to me, so I can actually evidence them myself. So it's all good when we've got a positive belief. We call these enabling or empowering beliefs, right? All good. As a coach, we're going to use them, and we're going to make sure that we keep those in place. We don't want to mess any of those up, even if they're not quite true. A bit like, I was liking this to X Factor, where they think they're a good singer and you feel like saying, you're just not. You're brilliant, because you're like, when you were 5 it didn't matter, now you're 15 it really does matter, because you sound like someone drowning a cat. But unfortunately they've still got such a strong belief, because it's come from a high power authority. That belief wins. It's still charismatic, Wednesday.
Barry's currently telling me I'm an X Factor mum because Isaac's into his karaoke on his VR, so we can hear him in his bedroom. And he did karaoke on the cruise, and I was, yeah, you're amazing, Isaac, but it is not the greatest, but he's trying.
People don't know the damage they're doing. That kid's going to think he's a brilliant singer, right? I've got it the other way around. So I'm not bad at singing, apparently, anybody that's in the know. But my mum, when I don't know how old I was, I suppose I was about 13, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. So this is how this belief was formed. I was singing Minnie Riperton, Loving You. Now, I don't know if you know that song, but it goes very high. I'm not even going to try and sing it. Just if you want to Google it, you'll know, but it goes very high. And my mum said, oh God, you've got such a high-pitched, shrill voice.
Oh.
I know, Mum, you didn't mean it. And she's probably been trying to put it right. And she then must have seen my face and she went, oh, I mean, and she's just kind of started to backtrack. Unfortunately, the damage had been done. My belief system had gone, I've got no, and my voice is too high pitched and my voice is bad. My mum doesn't like it. If my mum doesn't like it and she loves me no matter what, no one likes it. So guess what happened from there? So before this happened, so I must have been about 9. I'd been in the school choir, never to be seen again. Never did I did Joseph as a Technicolor Dreamcoat, and then I never did another thing. And I remember my mum saying, why aren't you going to be in the school plays, and why aren't you doing it anymore? No, I don't fancy it. Because I daren't tell my mum. It's because I didn't think I was very good at singing, because my mum didn't know she was creating that belief. But this is how people can accidentally create beliefs. So they can be positive or negative. I've got a million examples of this, because I've used and unpicked lots of stuff. So how do you know? It's a really good question to ask someone, by the way, because they've got to go and find the evidence. So when we're talking about negative beliefs, so when I ask you in the same vein to think about a belief you've got that is disabling or disempowering, I want you to think about what that one is. She's writing this one down, Heather is now. Look, see, she's got far more engagement from the crap than the good. Honestly, every time, by the way, it's quite normal. The brain is, the reticular activating system, which is your internal sat nav, essentially, is trained to look for problems, trained to look for bad beliefs and bad things. That's its job. That's its job. So yeah. So what is go on then, Heather, what is a negative belief you've got about yourself?
I'm fat.
Yeah, in fact, now this might sound like a silly thing to ask you, Heather, because like your brain is completely convinced of it, but how do you know?
Because when I look in the mirror.
So sometimes we believe it's true because we see it, right? I get it, I'm there, I'm with you, I'm the same. But actually, there was a time when we would believe we were fat when we weren't. Because unless you were born fat, and I feel quite sure that your mother didn't push you out at the weight and size you are now, pretty sure on this, it's a pretty safe bet. If she did, then wow, like that woman should have had a medal to bring out what, you about 5'10"? You're quite tall, aren't you? 5'10"?
5'8".
5'8", are you? Oh, I'm 5'3", everybody's tall to me. So yeah, so at some point you weren't. At some point you weren't, but at some point you decided you were going to be. And so what we need to do is we look at the evidence from when you created the belief. Because
I was bullied and told I was fat.
Me too, right? So me, exactly. And can I tell you, it's so common. I mean, I'm going to be coaching a lot of this. We're about to start a really low cost membership for people who are losing weight. We're going to get a lot of that. I was bullied or I was abused. There's a lot of that where the person decides to put an armor on, which is essentially weight, to try and defend themselves from it. That's essentially what happens. Pretty much every time. I've never seen it in coaching where it isn't the case. So what happens is we've got evidence of all the positive stuff. we've also got evidence of the negative stuff. And the positive stuff, when we created it, when our mum told us we could or couldn't sing, like you just did, Isaac, he'll have loads and loads and loads of evidence. We've actually got loads of evidence for the negative ones. It works in exactly the same way. The reticular activating system will find what it's looking for. Your brain will seek out what you think about, you'll bring about, what you know and you focus on will grow. So that's the way the brain works. If something isn't in there, it can't be triggered, it can't be accessed because it's just not there. It's a bit like going to a supermarket to try and buy baked beans and they don't sell them. It just doesn't exist. So when we're talking to a client, or anyone actually, and you probably notice this in your real life, and they get triggered on something, it means we have triggered a belief. Because if they didn't have a belief around whatever's been said, we just couldn't trigger them. Simple as that. So if, Heather, you had no beliefs around your size and shape, no matter what size or shape you were, and there are people out there that are quite happy with their size and shape, it didn't matter if someone called them fat, they would just laugh it off because their belief system is so strong around who they are. Like if someone said to me, you're a crap coach, I'd just laugh because like I've got all the evidence to say I am. I literally, it doesn't exist as a trigger in my head. If I was just starting out and someone said that to me and I wasn't quite sure, it would trigger that lack of confidence in me. Does that make sense? So we can be triggered with stuff that's in our head. We can't be triggered with stuff that's simply not in there. So when we're coaching and there's a trigger of some description, it is something always. Whatever that response that comes, something is always something when you're coaching someone. So what we're looking for then, and you're going to learn lots of processes that are going to help you to do this rather than have to go digging with a shovel, is we're going to look for evidence of when that belief was created, because we need to unpick it and we need to work out what was really true and what was really going on for that person. So Heather, for the sake of you and I, when we were, I don't know how old you were, but I was 12. I don't know how old you were. Might have been 11, but certainly first year of senior school is where mine sat back in the day. I would have to go back to that age of me to work out what made me believe that. Because actually, when I look at photos, I wasn't. So some kid obviously did something to say something, or I decided something. Maybe another kid was being picked on, because it doesn't even need to be our lived experience. Remember, this external event could have been watching someone else. So it could have been, and I'm just going to put this, I'm not sure it is for you, Heather, by the way, but just as an example, that you saw somebody else in your year that was overweight that wasn't being picked on actually as much as you were, because maybe that kid for some reason didn't stand out to them and they weren't being bullied. Therefore, your brain said, well, I need to be bigger then, because then they won't bully me. Does that make sense? Crazy. Bear in mind, this brain that's making these decisions is very young and very knowledgeable about life. It's making lots of decisions. So very often I see it where people have made decisions about having to stay safe, because then they're not going to be seen, because actually being seen was really scary. And in fact, there's a lady in my mastermind at the moment who's had such a lot of this. You're going to meet her at the retreat, actually. Such a lot of how it was not safe for her to be seen at all. So therefore, her brain is still using that belief about that, even in her adult state. She's 50 something, I think, don't know how old she is. But yeah, that brain created that belief when she was 6 or 7, probably even younger actually. And now she's still using that belief. It's like using an old version of Windows. It just doesn't work anymore. But actually, we haven't got a new version. So therefore, we'll just keep using the old belief till it's updated. So a lot of the NLP processes, we're updating these belief systems. We're helping people make new decisions and getting new evidence, because as soon as we create a new belief, the brain goes looking for evidence, because that's its job. The reticular activating system says, right, new belief's been installed. We need to gather loads and loads and loads and loads of evidence around it. It's a bit like, I think I said this last week, can't remember if I did, like if you decide something, like if you decide, for example, I started to talk about next level self, next level business, next level everything. So all of a sudden, my reticular activating system is looking for everything to do with that. The whole world is talking about next level stuff now. And actually, if you're in my world and you hear me saying that, you'll probably notice everybody else is saying it. I don't for one minute think they're copying me. They might be, because nothing's original, because the brain is literally picking up signals and information from outside of itself continuously. So what we're looking for is evidence. We're looking for real evidence, which I can tell you this hand on heart, in the years I've been doing this, very rarely, and I can only think of one instance out of the thousands of coaching sessions I've run, more than thousands, don't even know how many, where a belief was formed and it was actually true. Because they're never true. They're always a fear-based experience, and they're never true. For example, but we make them true. So Heather, at one point you weren't fat, lovely. You weren't, but you've made it true because you believed it so inherently, and then you had to gather evidence. Absolutely. Get it?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what NLP does. It helps people to unpick that original belief, and we've got lots of processes we do, all different ways around it, that we can access the unconscious mind and literally pick it to death, a bit like picking a spot, pick it to death till it doesn't exist, and then it'll heal over, and then we can put a new belief in its place. The brain doesn't like a gap, by the way. So if you've ever tried giving something up, the brain won't allow it because there's nothing in its place. The best example of this is Emma when she's doing dog training. So I don't know if, I think you've all got dogs or had dogs. If a dog is playing with a toy, which in this case is my hand cream, dog is playing with a toy that you don't want it to have, you try taking it off the dog, it'll be like, it'll literally hang on for dear life. If you take over something else to replace it, the dog will be, oh, that's interesting, and it will drop the old toy. And essentially the brain does exactly the same. If we can bring something more exciting, more desired, more true, and bring that to life in the brain will drop the old belief like an old toy, take new toy, right? Get the concept of this? So all the time we need to replace things. So we can't just remove things. That's why we have things where people, they try to give up something and they replace it with something equally or worse. They give up smoking, they overeat. They stop give up eating food, crap food, they start drinking. They give up drinking, they start gambling. They give up, get it, right? Because we haven't put anything in the place of it. We have to replace it, otherwise it's a big gaping hole, and the brain doesn't like that at all. We don't like gaps. We like everything to be nicely, neatly packed away and tidy, all nicely evidenced. So we need to create new beliefs, put new evidence in there. Okay. Any questions? How many beliefs you've got? Who knows? How many experiences you've got? Who knows? The brain is absolutely crammed, packed full. What you will learn is when we unpin the first time we decided to use that belief, if we can remove that, i.e. not by just removing it, which we can do with different therapy processes, but with NLP, is the client, remember this bit, the internal representation, if we can help the client realize it was never bloody true in the first place, that was a ridiculous belief, it almost becomes laughable. The client will sometimes laugh at their situation. There'll be stuff that you've believed that you no longer know is true, and you'll laugh at that version of yourself going, oh, that was crazy. I believed I had to do this. I remember once I thought I had to do what men told me. I laugh at that version of myself on quite a regular basis, let me tell you, because of course it's not true. I don't have to do what anyone tells me. Very strong new belief that creates a different state, a different physiology, and a very different behavior. Okay.
Can I ask a question, Viv, please?
Yeah.
So obviously the bullying, but something that sticks to mind as well that I've just been thinking about while I've been sat here is, could I be doing it to rebel as well? Have I got myself fat to rebel against something? Because one of my memories is my dad sent me for hypnotherapy to lose weight. And then I can't really remember how big I was, but I don't think in my mind I was that overweight if I was. And that scenario has stuck in my head quite a lot. And even now when he's living it is like paying for, he said, I'll pay like towards your injections, or when I wanted the operation, I'll pay for you to go and have the operation. He wants me to lose weight, but then when he's buying stuff, like tonight we all had salad, but he went to Tesco's and said, I've bought you this, I've bought you this. And it was like full fat, like potato salad and coleslaws and all the shit that you shouldn't be having. And I can't have that, Dad. I'm keeping off that. And like he bought chocolate the other day. So one really wants me to lose weight and then he's buying me loads of shit.
Yeah. And what are you making that mean? Because this is the external event. Beautiful example. Thanks, Heather. What are you making that mean? That's a really powerful question. You can ask anybody at any time. Because what we do is we understand the belief around that. What do you think what are you making that mean about your dad and about you?
That's what I can't understand.
No. Because you don't understand it from a value point of view, because you know your dad wants you to lose weight. So that's a very valuable belief you've got here. And actually, external events are not representing your belief system right now, because your dad wants you to lose weight, and yet he's not helping you lose weight physically, financially, but not physically.
Mm.
When we get to perceptual positions, we can do some work around that, by the way. Just write a note just so that we know. You okay?
Yeah.
That's really interesting what you say there, Heather, because I'm a bit like your dad. Because Jules, my wife, struggles to lose weight, and I'm always like, well, if you eat that, that won't happen, and then that won't happen, and then I'm like, oh, I like to see Jules smile, I like to make her happy, so then I'll buy her something, like, because I know she loves, like her favorite cake is, yeah, coffee and walnut cake. So if I see a nice coffee and walnut cake, I'll always bring it home, and and thank you for that, because you've made me just stop and think about that, really, and go, because in my head I'm showing her that I love her because I've thought about her and I've got her something that she wants, and yet actually then I'll say in the next breath, why are you eating cake?
So Heather, there we have a lived experience. Who knows? Because your dad's got his own mindset and his
Yeah.
own, but actually it would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? By the way, Emma does the same. So she's like, I'll make you whatever you want. I'm like, well, actually what I really want is a salad. But it's really hard for me to say that, because what I really want is cake. Like, it's like, actually, and now for the first time in my life, I really don't. So that's why it's a really different experience with Mondoro. But anyway, that's another story altogether. So yes, so sometimes we don't understand some of this stuff, and you can understand. By the way, when we've got an emotion like that, we've got a belief that's being activated, triggered. We've got a value that's been triggered. We've got some stuff going on. So whenever, that's why I've got a reputation for making people cry. Didn't even mean to do that, Heather, I'm sure. But you know, it's a safe space, and you're sorting this out. And actually, the other thing that happens is the internal representations are ready to be sorted when they're ready to be sorted. So when I say when a client is ready to be coached, they're usually being triggered quite a lot, because there's lots of stuff triggering these internal representations, because it's time to change them. The brain knows that they're not right almost. It's like, this is like when a client's saying, I'm going mad, I can't do anything about it, and I know I should be able to. They really want to shift. It's because they don't understand themselves. So actually, all you're doing as you're coaching is not you telling them, you're helping them understand by asking them questions they've never asked themselves. And that is the key to coaching. That's why people can't really coach themselves, although they say they can, because they can only answer the questions they're asking. So when someone else asks a different question, the brain has never answered that. We're going to create a different neuro pathway in the brain. We're creating a slightly different generalized thought, or a different distortion. We can distort the beliefs that were already there and make sure that the client realizes they're not true. And that's what's going on for you now. So I'm hoping that helped you a little bit to understand what your dad's doing, because he's doing the innate ways of doing things. He's doing what he's always done, and he's obviously always bought you nice things, I would imagine. I don't know. Probably always bought you them. Yeah, the way that Emma would make me cake, if I went over and said, yes, I'd like a cake, she absolutely would. Actually, she might not now, in fact, actually, but I think she probably would if I was manipulative enough. And I can be very manipulative, because, of course, when I want something, I want it, right? So my physiological condition is I want someone to behave in the way I want them to behave. Okay, thank you for asking the question, though, Heather. And you've allowed yourself to release some emotion. So what happens is when you've just changed that by just even voicing it. So just having a safe space to voice something you're feeling that you can't work out. Just want you to understand the power of that for yourself right now. That's what your clients are going to experience. And when we change the internal representation of it in some way, we change our state and our physiology changes. We cry, or we laugh, or we stop crying, or we become serious, or we stop feeling stressed. So anxiety sits with all of this as well. So this is how we solve anxiety for people, by the way. It's probably the easiest fix, believe it or not. There's loads of people, oh, I've been working with anxiety coach for a year. I'm like, what the fuck have they been doing for a year, is my response. It's like a very simple fix. We just need to fix some of this stuff. We just need to fix a belief, typically. And once we fix that, we fix everything. This is where the work is really done, deep in the unconscious. Yeah, this is where it all is, not here. So we could have, and so I just want to show you an example of how it works differently. We could have said, oh, Heather, it's fine, you're okay. And that's what a lot of people say. You're amazing, you're really pretty. You'll have had this said, yeah, but you're really successful, you're really pretty, you're so confident. Look, you run these things, even though you're sitting there thinking you're fat, right? And I know it, and I can say those words because I feel it too. But actually, that's conscious stuff. And the unconscious is still saying, not really. No, not really. I'm just kind of getting through it, really. And I know I can do better. I know I can be better. So when we're talking at people, i.e. giving them advice, like Faye, the temptation to give your friend the advice, very strong, but all you're going to hit is the surface of this water when you start giving lots of advice. Occasionally, you might be able to infiltrate it if you've got a strong enough power, or you've got a strong enough message, like a story that goes with it. Typically, we can get into the unconscious with storytelling. I'll explain that later in the course as well. But actually, and that's why people tell stories when they're doing public speaking or marketing. But essentially, someone convinced against their opinion will still be of the same behavior. Someone against their will have the same opinion still. Very, very important that we allow their brain to make all the decisions. So yes, Nikki, no matter what you're saying to your wife, her belief system will remain. She's got a lot of evidence around it until she's coached, essentially. Now you can understand why coaching is so powerful. Okay. So
it could be self-sabotage though as well, because actually this person in particular is on the injection-y thing that you mentioned.
sorry.
And that's what I can't understand. I mean, this is my mum I'm talking about. So so that's why I've got to be really careful. But I just said to her, I was like, why would you spend so much money on this thing, which I mean, I know people are taking it, but and that each to their own. But why would you spend all that money on something to then on the weekends admit that you're then just going off the rails, but you've tried everything? And I feel like, why would you? What a waste of money! It's such a waste of money. But she was like, you don't understand. It's not that easy. And I was like, well, I have kicked some quite serious addictions, which she doesn't know about. But you know, if I can kick something that I've kicked, then I feel like, you know, you have to, don't buy the thing. Don't go to the shops and buy the stuff. But I can't have brutal conversations.
Faye, I love that you brought this in here, because it literally is as good as it gets as a demonstration. So thank you very much. Because your map of the world is around all that money, because of course money is quite important to you at this point. Your mum probably not so much, by the way. So the money's not even a thing. And I know this because somebody said on one.
Afford it.
He said on one of my TikToks, the money I've saved. I thought, oh, I haven't even thought about the money I've saved, like on all the shit I haven't bought to eat, and I never even thought about that. That's a great angle. Thank you for that bit of content, but my brain never even went there. So she's absolutely right, your mum. Sorry to tell you, Faye, but you don't understand, because you don't live in her mind. You don't live in her belief system, her value set, and her existence. You live in yours. So you can't understand her any more than she understands your life. We can try, we can empathize, we can never fully understand. And it's not your job to. Your job is to help them understand. When you're coaching, it's not that, like, I don't understand you, Faye, and you don't understand me. If I'm coaching you, it's not my job to understand you. It's my job to help you understand you and shift your patterns in your brain, because otherwise it's just me understanding, and what I think of you has got absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with my belief system and my map of the world, and nothing to do with you. You've probably seen that meme as well.